Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first NAJ Live of 2021. Hope everyone's doing well, keeping okay, safe and healthy. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Gary, the commercial manager for the British Allied Trade Federation, which is obviously incumbent of the NAJ. It's been a rather hectic and whirlwind few days for me. My wife gave birth to our second child on Sunday evening, a little girl, Lola Lane. So they are in the other room at the moment. So if you hear any crying, I have to apologise. But there is nothing I can do about that, as all you parents would know out there. So, but thank you for joining us. Today we are joined by Michael Donaldson, who heads up and does a wonderful job with our JBN Jet Business Network. Scott Walker from Back on the High Street, Parify, and a couple of other companies which we'll touch on later, and Ian Cookson from PA Jewellery. So we've got a busy morning. I'm filling in for the lovely Helen Dimmock, who normally does this, but she's double booked today, so she'll be back next month, so be sure to join her then. So just want to bring up today's presentation for you, a bit of the timings, what we've got going on. So joining us first, obviously we've got Michael Donaldson, who will touch on how retailers have made the most of the lockdowns that we've all been in. Michael has kindly allowed time as well for Q&A. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to utilise the chat box on the side, pop them in, and I will ask Michael, and then also we'll put Michael's email address up there. If you want to ask any confidential questions, then you can. Then after Michael, we'll be joined by Scott and Mark from Back on the High Street, and we're doing a lot of stuff with the guys at Back on the High Street, so just wanted to touch on that and how we can benefit you. And then we wanted to get a retail perspective, so Ian from PA Jewellery. So just a couple of things NAJ related, some very exciting news. We have, and I don't know if you've seen this, a brand new homepage, which Ben Massey and David Roman, who sat behind doing everything now on this presentation, have been working tirelessly for months on. It's brilliant. I'm always going to say that, but it is. It's clear, it's concise, it's very easy to navigate. So I would urge you to have a look on that. We've given a real prominence to the Find a Jeweller section, so I'd urge you as a member to please make sure that your profile is up to date and correct, because we're getting a lot of traffic, both B2B and B2C, so please have a look at that. Industry news, what have we been doing? What can you get your hands on? So obviously with Brexit going on, we've been getting asked a lot of questions relating to that. So again, the guys in marketing and working with our international department have been looking to get some clear, consolidated guidance on that. So in our news section, the links will be going up shortly, you can get PDF documents which will hopefully answer any questions that you have. What else? The Goldsmith Centre recently opened applications for Getting Started 2021. Sorry, not applications, free course that you can do. So again, have a look at the website. Brilliant initiative that the guys at the Goldsmith Centre are doing there. We've unfortunately had to postpone our inaugural NAJ Summit, which was due to take place in June, until September. So between the 11th and the 13th of September, at the De Vere Stoughton Hotel in Northampton, we will have our inaugural NAJ Summit, and we've also taken the decision to move the awards back to the Benevolent Ball in December. So they will be, more information on them will be announced soon. Some really good news that the Benevolent Society again have launched this week. So they've launched the COVID Hardship Fund. Obviously, we're fully aware that many businesses have been really affected during COVID. So have a look at there, see if you are applicable, and if we can help in any way, then please get in touch. We're also proud to say that our Jet 2 course, so the Jet Diploma, has officially been published on the Regulated Qualifications Framework. So that's really good news. And the lovely guys at our Valuers community, so the IRVs, have announced some speakers for February's virtual Valuers conference. So that's enough from me, because I'm sure you do not want to hear from me anymore. So first up this morning, we have Michael Donaldson, who is going to discuss about the JBN and how people have been affected during lockdown and how they can help. So any seconds now, Michael will appear on our screen and he can take over. And as I say, any questions that you've got for Michael, please feel free to pop them into the chat box. And Michael, are you there to join us?
Hope you can all hear me. And Happy New Year to you all. Let's hope 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020. Can I take it away, Gary?
Well, you are. Take it away. I will disappear and see you guys shortly.
Just look for my slide transition at the bottom of the screen, which I've got. Excellent. Thank you. The purpose of this morning's session is to share with you how other retail jewelers have made the most of the 3 lockdowns so far. And to make it more real, I thought you'd appreciate hearing how members of the NAJ's Jet Business Network have got on with closing their stores, opening their stores, closing their stores, opening, closing. You get the gist of it. Share their emotions, their highs, their lows, the trials of homeschooling, the relief from receiving grants, the thrills and the spills of online sales, and also touch on the pain and the isolation of not being able to do what they love to do and what they need to do. So I've taken almost a diary approach from lockdown 1 through lockdown 2 to the present lockdown 3. Now, my slides were set up as you'd expect with lots of animation and transitions, but I've had to tweak them slightly to accommodate this platform, and they're a little static in terms of PDF format. So at times there's going to be lots of detail on the screen, which to an extent is deliberate, as I wanted to reflect their journey in their own words and their experiences. So for those of you who don't know me, I spent the first 3 decades of my career working for British-owned, American-owned and French-owned multinationals, which took me it took me to work, but not live, across Europe, the Far East, and on a regular basis into the US. During that time, I sold everything from bars of soap to bars of gold, coffee machines, blankets, Eco Gold, Fairy Liquid, and what have you, for every generation of the family, every room in the house, and effectively for every channel to market, whether that was online, in print, and in person. And I started 2013 a management consultancy, the Value Innovator. I was a self-employed director of a limited company, a title that has taken on such a different meaning during COVID-19. My first retained client was the NAJ, who asked me to facilitate their network of retail jewelers that was established under the NAJ back in 2005 and is the jewelry industry's longest running peer-to-peer network. And it's a pleasure to be involved with them. The JBN provides a unique opportunity for independent retail owners and directors to meet with like-minded professionals in a confidential network. What goes in the room stays in the room, that fosters supportive and trusting relationships, which then enables the members to benchmark their business with other jewelry businesses, develop their strategic thinking, invest in their own professional development, and ultimately grow their business. Throughout COVID, this community has continued to deliver on that through their shared knowledge, expertise, and at this time, more importantly, their experience. As a result, the connections and friendships and businesses are all the more stronger as we go into 2021. Even a few of the members have got new stores. But as we know, it's not been easy this last 10 months. Retail doors have been closed for 4 months on March to June period plus November, and some came out and went into tier systems that stopped them putting money in the tills. We took 7 polls over our Zoom meetings throughout on confidence, which reflected the emotional roller coaster that we've all been on. Because this pandemic has taken its toll in so many ways, we've just recently confirmed that over 100,000 people have lost their lives. There have been store closures and restrictions, salaries and shortages, all these things have unsettled many emotionally, physically, mentally, and even spiritually. And in reality, we're dealing with two contagions here: the virus, C19, and the emotions that go with it and have been generated by it. These were some of the initial reactions of lockdown 1. And as you'd expect in week 1 of a lockdown, they all typically default to the practicalities. What am I going to do? What processes should I have in place? Simple things like, I put the call forwarding from the shop to my mobile or to my home. Who's accessing which government grants and which local grants? What's the employment status as a director? Can we go on furlough? Down to simple practical things like screenshots of the premises for the record in case, but hopefully not required. By week 2, people were beginning to fill their spare time with a whole host of activities. This is the first time I'd heard from a member the name Joe Wicks. And by the end of week 2, the Zoom socials were up and running. Yet it took to about week 4 before members started thinking about the future. Simple things like cash flow assumptions. And some members were putting forecasts out for not only 3, 6, but 9 months. Others were talking about how they were going to reopen, what staff they would need. Would they need a sale to announce they were reopening? Others were updating jewellery repair price lists. And others listing products for websites that they didn't yet have. Throughout lockdown, we did polls just to see how we were feeling and what our expectations were, because there's nothing better than hearing from somebody else that's in your position, in your sector, in your industry, and in your network. Questions from, we're supposed to be in lockdown, and yet half the people I know are still going to work. How does that work? Or when do you think we're going to reopen? In week 6, 56% of the members said, we'll be opening in June, don't worry. 5% have said, forget it, it'll be August. In terms of conversation snippets, members were starting to tackle those things they previously never had time to do. Those that came into lockdown with websites were generating revenue. Others were taking time, looking to the future and preparing for the future when they came out of lockdown. You see, one member said, I've cleansed my database of 8,500 and I'm ready to go. I'm good to go. Other snippets. Here, really, it was the tension and the excitement building as we came to June 15th. Yet in the group, there were people that wouldn't be opening until August and September based on their locality. Can you imagine trying to reopen a store in Canary Wharf? Normally attracts 100,000 people to work there, and only 5 to 10,000 were going back in June. Week 9 was, how much time, guys, are you spending on your business? Actually on your business, because this is a great time to think about your business. Surprisingly, almost 40% were spending less than a third of their time on their business. And as we got out of lockdown and we moved through the rest of the year, there was a clear correlation between those who spent time on the business, not just in it, with costs, sales, and profits. I showed you that slide with, I think, 7 months of confidence and the poll and the ups and downs. And this was the poll June 30th. The majority had opened and were trading again. The scale to the left, 1 was, I might have to close. 3 in there was, I might have to downsize. 5 was, I'll be all right. Thanks for asking, I'll be all right. 7 was, I'm hopeful. And 10, I'm extremely confident. And you can see the two peaks there at 4 was coming between the I'll be all right and I shouldn't have to downsize. And the 7 between the somewhat hopeful, but not quite confident. Let's skip the next 4 months and look at this poll that we took in October the 14th. And the majority of retailers had now moved to the right. And you can see that 40% were at 9, where 10 was an extremely confident. And these were the emotions that we saw move and swing according to their own experience and what they were hearing from other members within the group. But then we hit lockdown 2. But many were prepared, and the Zoom conversations, we were meeting weekly, the Zoom conversations started to reflect that. And the conversation consuming the guys on November 12th was websites. Because those who didn't have a website in lockdown 2, the vast majority spent time getting digital and transactional online. And as you can see from some of the quotes, it was working and it was helping and it gave them a focus, particularly during lockdown. Website is now transactional. I'm waiting my first order. New store, new website launched between lockdowns. Shopify ready to launch this week. First website sale generated today. Happened to be 2 beads, but it just made no difference. It was a first sale. The other thing that members were talking about at this time was communication. They'd worked very hard on communicating with their staff. I touched on it earlier about the practicalities and the processes. Lockdown 2, they're now communicating far more and far more personally with their customers. You can see here personalized letters, and the response and the activity was positive, and yet still people were working in lockdown on the future of business, getting rid of the full stock takes. People were still dressing the windows, putting the lights on, and having lots of signage in the window about click and collect, how to order and how to pay. Yet this was meant to be the time of the year that retail jewelers made the money. This was Christmas. And there was an immense amount of anxiety about having to stay at home self-isolating. If you're used to going into work and you've had a routine, which you've been doing for years, and working 5 or 6 days a week, to suddenly find yourself at home with no control and feeling very isolated, feeling the loss of my normal social life. Not only has my work life been disrupted, but also my social life had been disrupted. And that was the importance of those hobbies, whether it was swimming in the sea, riding your horse, making cocktails, taking up a new hobby, or painting in oils. Homeschooling was really starting to add to the domestic pressure, particularly if both parents were working from home. And rotas were put in place. 3 days on, 3 days off. Lockdown 2 seems more difficult than lockdown 1. These are not my words. These are the words of the JBM members. Practicalities of splitting teams on reopening to avoid cross-contamination. You don't want the virus to go through the whole team whilst you're open that you have to close down again. And a general feeling of being more penalized in this lockdown than the last lockdown. Shopify. Somebody was given advice and direction on how to get online very, very quickly. And this person spent 2 days setting up the site, putting 200 images on, and then made 3 sales in the first 12 hours. And this is the value of the group, their experience they were sharing. They were reducing the risk taking in other people's decision making. And the first order, another one, 2 charms. You may be closed on key days within your calendar, but your website's still open. 66% of the team, in one case, were dealing with call and collect, and they were averaging between £2,000 and £5,000 a day. And the flyers, the communication was more outward looking rather than inward looking, whether that's a local activity with local designers on local social media, or personalizing letters, actually personalizing and hand signing letters. And in response, the engagement with customers led to people receiving cards, calls, inquiries, chocolates and flowers as a thank you, because this reaching out in person and this connection with your community was important, not only for the retailers and the staff, but also for those in the locality. And of course, some people remain focused again on the future, and then we're starting to invest in those areas that would enhance their business when we came out of lockdown. So November 25th, the black line. This poll was taken 2 days after Boris announced lockdown 2 would be replaced with a tier system on December 2nd. And we're starting to see the confidence shift to the left. We've come off the peak on 9, that's dropped. The previous peak on 7, back in October when we'd had a great September. October was okay, but we were confident. We're seeing that arrow now shift down to the lower numbers. Look at 5. And 5 was, we might be okay. We might be all right. It wasn't the merriest of Christmases, with visiting restrictions with families, but 55% of the JBM members sold more in December 2020 than they did in December 2019. That was before lockdown 3. The conflict you can see here is real conflict across the groups and the conversations that the retailers were wrestling with. Should I really be encouraging customers to make a non-essential journey with call and collect? Is it going to be worth the potential backlash on social media? One customer who was in store counting stock and tidying away and clearing up and just looking after the physical side of the business answered the phone when it rang. And he sold a 2,500 piece of jewellery. But he said, I've got it, it's in stock, I'll take your money, but I will not be able to deliver it to you until April. He obviously had a crystal ball given the recent announcement. But he was really pleased to be commended by the lady on the phone for taking the pandemic seriously. And that's something we've been discussing weekly about our brand reputation. It's very important. It takes years to build and can be lost in days. No, that's not a typo. People are talking about moving to bigger stores and the opportunity that they saw to increase the footprint and the store space. Obviously, the chat on grants and what they were worth and how quickly they were coming through the system. Personal routine was coming through as being increasingly important. Having that routine, even down to the fact that someone had made a list of what they would like to do and intend to do over those next 6 weeks. Now, not another typo. A member was opening a new store. People are now talking about Valentine's Day and the realities. The reality of that quote down at the bottom. Thank you. Without the JBN, I'd be thinking everyone else is still making money. And that was the honesty and the respect and trust and confidentiality with the members of that community. Here's our poll from January the 13th. And for the first time since March, we have members thinking about closing. If you look to the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see 5% of members are seriously thinking about closing their stores. Mindset has helped. Mindset have helped these independent retailers. And I'm going to just share with you one JBNer's journey from lockdown 1 to 3, who has spent a lot of time working on his business and the types of things he brought to our Zoom meetings. As you can see there, he said, look, I've had a great November, all the work I put in, so I don't feel that pressure to be opening for click and collect. Retailers, he's a retailer, Retailers always say they are too busy. Well, now you have time. Use your time you are not at work to work on ideas for later in the year. The facts are always there, whether you know them or not, but you'd be foolish not to look at them. And we share in the JBN, we share our sales performance data, we share our margin data, our cost data. It's all confidential, has a confidential store number, but there's a raft of data that people can lock into and say, Michael, I've seen that store 100 is very similar to mine. Could you ask them? I'd like to have a conversation. And only in the last 7 years has someone said, thanks for the offer, Michael, but I don't particularly at this moment feel I want to share. The facts are there, staring at you in black and white. Open your eyes. Not bad for us, only 5% down on the year, but I've made more profit than last year. January is always a lost month for us, so I don't mind being closed. It's allowing me to do stuff. And at this week's Zoom, this member shared with the other group that what he was doing was reviewing his entire range. He was reviewing key price points within the categories of that entire range. And having identified those key price points, he was repricing the stock that he had to hit those key price points. So some went up, some went down. And anything that no longer fitted in with his pricing strategy is going off to be scrapped. There's a mindset in this, guys. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Our results were driven by new digital and fulfillment capabilities, increasingly personalized and insight-based marketing, banner portfolio differentiation, and a strong merchandising strategy increased our market share. That's not a comment from a JBM member. It's a comment from the CEO of Signet, who shared their Christmas sales, which they said were flat, only at 1.8 billion. But it's not complicated. And the members were doing that, and I'm sure you were doing that. You were looking at your digital presence. You were looking how you're going to fulfill it, how you're going to do click and collect. Once you debunk the jargon, strategy is not complicated. They were being personalized, whether that's a handwritten letter or a phone call, and the strong merchandising strategy. As we know, November, December are still critical to us as retail jewelers. Lockdown relationships, do you have them? When Ben rocked up to Congress, he said, wow, I love the network. Can we do a poll? I see a great marketing opportunity for doing return on investment on the poll. I said, yeah, feel free. So we did an exit poll, and the return on subs was effectively, for every pound you put in, you got £21 back. And I said, that's brilliant, fantastic. But we didn't have the whole members there, and you would have missed these people because I know this person's done this person's done that. But I love the idea, Ben. What a great marketing tool for the JBN. So when we rocked into 2019, I repeated the request, and I said, at the meeting, I can get 100% return. This is going to blow this figure. Bear with me, Ben. I will give you the data. The message from the group, because it's their group, I'm there to facilitate, it was really clear. And whilst they enjoy the financial gain from the shared advice and the ideas, what they really valued was the community. And people said, no, not give me a figure, I'm not bothered. You cannot put a price on relationships. Another one said, it's about stimulus, it's about my own well-being, and I really enjoy being with the community. So takeaways, 10 takeaways, and then I'll open up for Q&A. And I know this is very focused on retail. The clue was in the heading about how other retail jewelers made the most of lockdown, but there will be others from other sectors within our industry, and a lot of these will apply to you as well. It's not complicated. Spend time on your business rather than just in it. This week in the Zoom, some of the members shared, I'm still going into the shop. I go in 5 days a week because I have the routine and the isolation and lockdown 3 seems to be worse than lockdown 2, but I'm spending time on my business. 2, understand your business numbers. That's your data, your sales, your costs, your profitability. 3, understand your positioning in the sector, within your jewelry sector, where you are within that chain supply. There could be manufacturers on, wholesalers on, hobbyists, retailers. Understand your positioning in the sector and in your locality, the environment, your town, your city, your location, and understand what you offer and what your offering is. 4, if you spend all your time focusing on the threats, you could miss the opportunities. And there comes a time when the penny drops and you think, I cannot control everything. Just focus on what you can control and look to the future. And that was one of the things you've seen demonstrated, particularly with getting online and getting online fast with the members. Number 5, identify the habits and the behaviors that have got in the way. What are you doing that's stopping you doing what you should be doing, or your staff doing? Identify them and eliminate them. Stop doing it. We've had a tough year. We've never been through a pandemic before together. And we're going to have a tough year coming. 6, spend time with your trusted network, whoever that may be. Invest in those relationships. You do not have to be on your own at this time. 7, I know these are all obvious. Embrace digital. If you weren't online and transactioning online at the start of lockdown 1, get online before the end of lockdown 3. You've seen the advantages. 8, engage your community. Engage the other retailers around you on your high street. Engage with the associations. Engage with your neighbours and contribute. It's good to give. 9, respect yourself. I've seen a lot of people suffer during these lockdowns and forget how good they were at doing their job. And sometimes they need to sit down and take stock and remind themselves that life was good before lockdown and life can be good after lockdown. Respect yourself and love what you do. But don't forget, you're in business to make money. Remember to make money. Thanks, guys. I'll take any questions.
Michael, as always, absolutely fascinating. And I was fortunate on that congress that you mentioned about Ben. Actually, that was my first day with NAJ, and I couldn't believe the amount of sharing that took place in that room. Now, for those people that don't know you and the JBN, are you very quickly able to describe what you do for the JBN? Because I know it's a hell of a lot. It's not as simple as just putting in a few figures and putting it out to everyone. You work tirelessly on this.
Yeah, it's passion. It's something I love doing. It's helped my sanity through lockdown. The NAJ retained me for 2 days a month. I think this month I've done about 5 or 6. It is year end, so we're setting up new templates. One of the monthly reports, if it doesn't add value, we stop doing it. So I've spent the last few days corralling people in to get their year end reports and saying, don't be embarrassed if your figures are 0. You've been closed for 4 months or you've been closed for 6 months. But let's share that. And we've been saying, let's put an extra column in. Let's take those 2 out because that is now relevant. What was in that we've taken out was staff churn. That's been made a nonsense of. So I add value in that sense. I facilitate. So it's the retailers, it's retailers supporting retailers. It's for the retailers, by the retailers. So I will, type of service I'll do, I'll be monitoring the advice forum. We did over 100 questions. So this is where a member will ask the others, I need advice. I'm looking for a supplier who can do this, or has anyone got that? Or I'm having trouble with a particular member. Can someone, and it's a recommendation site. So the advice forum works 24/7. I will save them the time of scrolling through various articles or the trade mags, and I take what I believe is relevant and I post those out as a news flash. I always quote the source on, because we have some great trade magazines. They get a bit bored with me sharing stuff from The Economist and the Financial Times, but if it's relevant, it's relevant. And again, I'm not bothered because I put in the title, I don't follow the open rate. I try and make the title as easy as possible. Say, I don't do watches, click, don't need to open it. So we do business surveys. You've got to flavor the business surveys. We did one last year about websites, cost of websites, effectiveness of websites, pitfalls, tips and advice. And again, this is all shared. I facilitate. I take the agenda from the requests of the members, usually at our meetings. We've been meeting online with Zoom. We did a national meeting a week last Wednesday, and we're going to do national. We do regionals every week on Zoom, because that's how it is, and we do a national once a month. And what we set up then, I requested 3 secret shoppers to focus on a member's website and critique it. Just 4 questions, we fed those back. So lots and lots of stuff. Yesterday, there was an idea suggested, because 3 guys are refitting shops at the moment. They are spending money on serious refits, not just shop fronts, serious refits. And one of the members said, hey, it'd be really helpful, Michael, if you could take us through this journey of how you project manage this. And I said, yeah, if Michael's up for this, I know 2 other guys. So maybe on our next national Zoom, the 3 guys that are going through shop refits can tell us their start point and what process they went through. Did they use outside contractors? Did they get a project manager in? Was it someone from the industry? Was it outside? All those questions that add value, takes the stress out of the situation, and reduce the risk. I facilitate a group of business owners getting around a table and sharing their experience and their knowledge and expertise. And
one thing there which really you reiterated to me is that the members set the agenda, which I find it's for the members. They set the agenda, and you go away and do an absolute fantastic job. Now I'm going to fire a quick few questions at you, as we do have time. So guys,
well, you want quick answers then? Is that what you're saying, Gary?
No, you can carry on. But if anyone does have questions for Michael, then please pop them in the chat. Now, obviously, this is relevant to me and to many people, but homeschooling and Boris's announcement yesterday. How do you think that's going to affect people? What do you think the immediate outlook is for retail from that perspective?
One of the comments yesterday was, this was a bloke, by the way, I really look forward to the weekends because I don't have to do homeschooling. It's been really challenging. Another member said, I do 3 days homeschooling, then I get on with my business, and my wife does 3 days homeschooling. They split. It is shared, and that's how it should be. But it's been really, really challenging. I think those that are homeschooling will have a greater appreciation of what teachers do and what they put up with. But it's been challenging. I was speaking to someone over the weekend. She's a grandmother, and she's been helping her daughter with homeschooling. So while she's of grandmother age, she zooms in and is on screen with her 8-year-old granddaughter. And that's a wonderful way to help out parents who are having to go to work or trying to go to work and juggle those balls.
Brilliant. So that's the immediate, and I echo that. Teachers do an absolutely fantastic job. I've got a 5-year-old at the moment that's in his room that's got his mattresses out and has built a house with them. So God knows what his bedroom will.
Nothing wrong with creative play.
Definitely. We've got a question from Pravin. What is your outlook for 2021 based on JBN members' experience?
I haven't a clue. What we will be looking at, and this is why we've reformatted the report, is how do you plan for uncertainty? How do you plan for uncertainty? So we'll be doing some planning for uncertainty. We'll be taking worst case, best case, hoped for case, and building like that. But again, it's mindset. And what you have with the network, because we'll be sharing our plans with each other, is that reality check and that sense check. Nobody thought that we'd have members. I think we've got 2 members opening stores, 1 moving to a bigger store, and 3 refitting. We never thought we'd be doing this type of activity in lockdown. The 4 months, I think I touched on earlier, the 4 months that we were closed, accounted for in 2019 36% of combined retail sales. That was a big. We've lost a third of the year in value and sales. We don't know what's going to happen. So no, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not foolish enough to say this will happen because of the uncertainty. Where I can help my members with the experience I've had in my career with the larger businesses, we'll do a lot of scenario planning, and we'll do some planning for various cases of what may or may not happen.
And touching on the members that are part of the JBN, for anyone that's interested and intrigued about the JBN, are you able to describe the sort of community and what goes on between the JBN members? Just a brief sort of snapshot. I mean, I'm fortunate, I've been privy to a lot of it, and it's brilliant, but just to get your perspective as the sort of lead on the JBN business network.
Yeah, I smile then because I don't host the WhatsApp groups, thankfully, but I'm in and I see the chat, and sometimes I wake up to 60 messages when people have been messaging after too much red wine and late at night. But there is that sense of sharing and that community. I've seen relationships. I've seen trust, respect, and relationships grow, and people grow as business people and as people in themselves, with their confidence, their openness, and their willingness to share. Definitely.
A question from Keith Newland, which I had a feeling that questions like this would come in, which is fantastic. So we'll get your perspective on it. Should the JBN not be an integral part of NAJ rather than an added extra?
I'm only retained by the NAJ. Yeah, there are, and even Boris has got onto the value of peer networks, and he's rolling them out across the country. They're not the best, they're not world leading, I can assure you, and they've all got to be signed up and delivered by the 21st of March. So peer networks do have a value. I'm not going to comment on the cost, that's something for the NAJ to consider. What I found is beneficial. If people are paying £1,000, they commit to it. They commit to it and they share with it. But it's like a gym membership. You've got to turn up at the meetings. You've got to turn up on engaging the WhatsApp and the Zoom to get value for that money. Otherwise, it's like a gym membership. Say, I'm paying for it. I'm not getting the value for it. I'll leave Keith to ask
well,
the NAJ.
If you can, we're not going to shy away from that questions. I think it's important that we answer them. So you can either, I'll put my email address in there, or our chair, Gary Rowe, who I believe is on the call, and anyone from NAJ would be more than happy to speak to you and answer your questions. We've had a few questions in on percentages and numbers of surveys, etc. We're going to pop Michael's email address in the chat, so you can ask Michael directly any questions relating to them.
Just to dig Gary out of a hole here, before we came online, I said, I'm not sharing JBN confidentialities. I'm not going to talk about numbers. You've got to be in it to get it. I will give you a feel of what we've been through, you know, and it's been tough for some members.
It has, definitely. And someone once said to me prior to being with NAJ, you don't know what you don't know. And the sharing of data, honestly, guys, it's second to none. It really is. Final thought from sort of you, Michael, unless there's any more questions, and it's a bit of a blunt one, really, but what does the JBN do for its members?
Ben will be delighted I'm going to quote him. It makes them money and saves them money. But beyond that, it creates community, relationships, and support. And that's what we all need during COVID-19.
Definitely. Well, I, just on behalf of NAJ, would like to thank you, Michael, for not only today, but all of your hard work over a number of years, and especially during lockdown. What you do is invaluable to our members. So thank you. And guys, we've popped Michael's email address up, or it will be going up very shortly. So please feel free to drop him a line. Are you joining us for the bubbles later?
Yes, I'll be around for the bubbles.
Excellent. So for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, once we finish this webinar, we break off into a Microsoft Teams area where we can see you all, and you can ask any questions directly to Michael, to Ian, to Scott, or Mark, etc. So the link for that will go up. But Michael, thank you. And
thank Thank you.
we'll see you shortly in the bubbles.
Great.
Now, we will shortly be joined by Scott Walker and Mark Hollis from Back on the High Street. Now, for those of you that don't know Back on the High Street, they are relatively new company that have been helping a large number of our members already in creating and building websites for them related to the jewellery industry. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong there, my friend. How are we?
Correct.
Are you good?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
And I'm also delighted to say that Back on the High Street are the headline sponsors for a couple of things this year. So at the NAJ Summit in September, they'll be headlining in our gala dinner. They'll be headlining the NAJ Awards in December at the Benevolent Ball, and they're also the headline sponsor of the Benevolent Ball. So, Scott, there's a lot of things that we need to whiz through. So for those people that don't know Back on the High Street, are you able to give them an overview of how you can help them and what you offer them?
Sure. It all came about after the first lockdown. We spoke with a lot of customers of ours that we were providing LED sanitization equipment to, amongst other products. And it became immediately apparent that the ones that were doing good business and continuing to trade were the ones that had a good digital presence.
Which Michael also referred to in his presentation before.
Absolutely right, yeah. So we decided then that we'd invest in building an e-commerce operation to pretty much ensure the future of the jewelry supply chain. So the whole of the supply chain relies upon the success of the retailers. So if the retailers fail to make it, the whole of the supply chain falls apart. So by us putting together an offering to build e-commerce websites for retailers, it means the whole of the supply chain will then have a better chance of surviving.
And how do you do that for them, Scott? What's the details? What's involved? The timetables, the costs?
So we hired in the skills that's required to build a backbone, a technological backbone to host websites. We can build them in 5 days. We've got the technical capabilities to do all the graphic design and back it all up with marketing plans as well to help people maximize their impact.
And we're going to be sharing some examples of that through our news stories, through relevant programs that the guys have already done and worked on. Now, you've obviously we've all been going through lockdown. What have you seen, Scott, as the positive? Let's look at this with a positive outlook. But what have you experienced with a few hats on during this period?
So what we've noticed, and which Michael alluded to earlier, was that the independent jewelers are going to be in a much stronger position going forwards, because a lot of people will be hesitant to go to large shopping centres where lots of people sort of congregate. So we see a shift back to the high street. A lot of the bigger brands that support the shopping centres, Zara, Debenhams, Topshop, a lot of these have either collapsed already or probably will do if we don't open the doors very soon. So the big shopping centres rely on these brands to drag people in. And if they aren't there, then the more boutiques, the more independents on the high street will have a much better chance of surviving.
Definitely. And obviously we titled this this section of the NAJ Live about the members marketplace. So to bring it back in, I know that I've been bending your ear a little bit over the past few months, but so we're delighted to announce that sort of fellow NAJ members get exclusive terms and relative discounts with yourself.
Absolutely.
And they're able to access your contact details, which they can see beautifully behind you. And I think it would be a shame not to mention about the backdrops which you guys are offering to people with digital in. So
it was just another one of our offerings to help people to be able to trade from home, or even in small jewelry stores which don't have an awful lot of space. So in order to look as most professional as possible and get your branding across, we built these banners which we get printed in 4 days. We do all the graphic design, print those, and we provide also a little, it's a laptop riser that puts your camera at eye height and allows you to sort of, I'll just show you here, get this squared up against the sides of the banner.
And what's the cost of that, Scott?
The whole kit with the design is $499 delivered. And obviously, being a lighting company as well, we have a light that you can control. Makes you have a nice suntan if you want, or good for showing jewellery to customers.
No, it's very good. I've know a couple of people that have got one, and we've actually utilised them at the NAJ Lives previously. So that's been good. So what else is going on in your world, Scott? Obviously, you touched on the lighting there with Parify. Michael touched on a number of JBM members that are currently having refits to their stores. Are you seeing similar? And how's?
Yeah, we're on the refit side. There's a lot of people have taken the opportunity to reevaluate the layouts of the stores, or are they going to move? What's coming up on the high street? Are there bigger, better units in better locations that have been vacated? So there's a lot of movement. One of our companies in the group, Progressive Display, is rather busy on store design at the moment and putting together a lot of proposals. One of the overriding issues that people have is the worry that the general public have of walking into a store. Is it busy? So the thought process is to open up windows so people can see inside the shop before venturing in, to see if it is overcrowded or if there is room for them to get in as well. It's the mental change that people have from not being bothered about people to being very concerned about how many people are in close vicinity.
Definitely. One other thing which is very exciting, which I only found out about a couple of weeks ago when you told me, is, and our members will be getting some info on this soon through our website, is can you just touch on the light boxes? Now, obviously, we're talking about websites. Are you able to share with the guys how you can assist them with the light boxes? Because we've seen a huge uptake from our members with these recently.
Obviously, one of the critical parts of getting your website online, and bear in mind we can build it and launch it fully trading in 5 days. The problem that people have is getting good quality images online. Now, if they're not provided by the suppliers of the jewelry, the brands, for want of a better phrase, then you need to take them yourselves. And we've seen some strange efforts of people taking jewelry photographs with their cameras. It's probably not the best solution. So we bought 6 different types of light boxes from different suppliers globally, and eventually settled on the gem light box because it just gives the best, super quick methods of taking consistent photography. And what I mean by consistent is when you're photographing a piece of jewelry, sometimes the background will come out gray, other times a slightly different shade of white. But when all these are lined up on a website, they can look amateurish. So by using this light box with either its black or its white background, it ensures consistency, and that looks very professional on your website.
And what we'll do, we appreciate it's difficult to sort of reaffirm that through here, but what we'll do is, as I say, we will post some news stories on the website and some video content as well, so you're able to see the quality of these light boxes. Now, if anyone is wanting to get in touch with you, Scott or Mark, for anything, so back on the high street Parify, obviously they can see your contact details behind you, but what's the best way for them to go about doing that? Telephone
or email. We're working 5 days a week. We're in the factory every day. The whole team's here. But yeah, just drop us an email or give us a call. One of the team will certainly be able to help.
Excellent. Are you able to, like Michael, are you able to join us for the bubbles after, in case anyone has any questions for either of you?
Sure. Happy to take any questions.
Absolutely right. I just wanted to touch on something else that Michael had said as well. When it comes to websites, it is one of the most important marketing opportunities now is your existing customer base. So by capturing that data, you start understanding when people's birthdays are, and instead of putting a trap out in the woods to catch a squirrel, you have a much better success rate if you go out actually hunting it. So knowing that you've got a customer that has a birthday, that has a wife, that has an anniversary, and knowing when these dates are through data capture, you can utilize that to generate sales for your business. So the thought process here is let's make brand awareness of the companies so good on social media that people know who we are, but then let's leverage our customer base that we have for sales. And that's one of the key features with the Back on the High Street websites is its loyalty program and data management.
Definitely, and I would urge people that either haven't got a website to get in touch with the guys at Back on the High Street, or are looking to potentially upgrade their existing one and progress further. So, guys, thank you so much for your time.
Very welcome.
See you both very shortly in our. Oh, we may have a question very quickly before we go. From Lee. I'm not a retailer. I'm an independent valuer who does require good images. Are your light boxes available for sale only for your e-commerce website clients?
Yes, absolutely. We had a gentleman in with us yesterday who saw a completely different opportunity for us with the light box that we hadn't even considered. And that was for photographing customers' jewelry as they take it in store. So if a ring's bought to you with a 4-carat emerald in it or whatever, then the light box can be used to take close-up photography of the actual stone or the damages or the ring as a whole, that the customer can sign off and say, yes, that's my stone. There have been instances in the past where people have accused jewelers of changing stones or doing this, but that will enable you to see inclusions, see marks on the surface of the stones because the quality is that good. And certainly from insurance purposes, you can be assured that it is the exact product that you gave to the jeweler.
And I think also touching on that for the social media side of things, with social media playing such a provenance and a relevance with everyone now, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Even my wife was doing TikTok videos during labour, which I found very strange. But no, thank you for that. Lee, if you get in touch with Scott or Mark, they will be able to help you. So thank you, guys, and we will see you both shortly.
Thank you,
Look forward to it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Now, for final part of today, we are joined by Ian Cookson from PA Jewellery, who back in 2019, it feels weird saying 2019 because last year was pretty much a write-off, won Team of the Year at the NAJ Awards. Good morning, Ian.
Morning. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Very good.
Yeah, good. Enjoying everything so far. So it's good.
Excellent. We had a good catch up this morning, didn't we? Just before the call, and had a few giggles.
Yeah.
So it just really is. Thank you for joining us today. And I know that you kindly agreed to sort of share your perspective and outlook on the past year and lockdowns, etc. So I'm going to sit in with you and jump in and ask any questions that our audience have and any that I have. So over to you.
Okay, that's great. So good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear and see me properly. When I was first asked to speak today, I wondered how I fit in with all of the excellent speakers the NAJ have had over the broadcast over the last 10 months. I'm not a marketing guru or a specialist in online growth, and I have absolutely no expertise to offer on coping with lockdowns. I'm certainly not an accomplished public speaker. In fact, doing this is absolutely terrifying me. But it turns out that they asked me because they wanted to hear from a typical retail jeweller to share their experience of 3 lockdowns and the best part of a year of restrictions. A lot of the things that I can tell you about PA Jewellery will sound familiar with your own businesses or ones that you know. We're a jewellery retailer and we rely heavily on our in-house workshop for stock and special commissions. We sell jewellery from £10 to tens of thousands, and we have a very loyal customer base. But there are a couple of things that are likely to be a little bit different about us too. Our showroom isn't on a high street or in a shopping centre, but on a small parade of shops in a predominantly residential area. Being based in an old bank building means that we don't even have any shop windows. The other thing is that we are employee owned. explaining that to you is a whole different presentation, but basically it means that the employees share in the company's fortunes and they have a lot more say in the decision making. So lockdown one. Back in March last year, when the first lockdown looked inevitable, I did what I suspect most of you did. I panicked. Along with my co-directors, I pored over figures, worked out how long we could get by without an income, and even started to consider having to liquidate stock. Then, as the grants and other support was announced, things started to look at least a little bit more manageable. After some lengthy discussions, we decided to furlough everyone, including myself, as we felt it wasn't going to be worth keeping someone active to deal with the limited number of inquiries our online and online sales we were likely to get. Our website acts as a great shopfront, but it only actually brings a limited amount of direct sales. So after a couple of frantic preparation days, the first week of lockdown, I should say, felt a bit like a holiday. The sun was shining. I spent the days walking the dogs and playing with my daughter. And because the shop was closed, I wasn't even receiving the usual holiday howly phone calls. Then, for whatever reason, during week 2, the holiday feeling ended abruptly. And I suddenly became very concerned that we'd got it all wrong. Fortunately, this happened to coincide with the first of the lockdown Zoom meetings organised by Michael for the JBN groups. And this gave me an opportunity to talk to the jewellers, see what they were doing, share my concerns, which turned out they were pretty much the same concerns as everybody else's. Importantly, it also made me realise that there wasn't some magic formula we were missing out on, and there wasn't really a way to keep doing business. By the end of week 3, we'd started to get odd inquiries coming through by email, as well as a couple of online orders. Looking at the furlough rules, we'd realised that after 3 weeks, we could bring someone out of furlough to work for a day, deal with the inquiries and dispatch orders, then furlough them again. The following week, we'd do the same again with a different person, then again the week after that. It wasn't a lot, but it allowed us to do some business and helped keep us sane. It also gave the opportunity to get the goldsmiths working again and get all the existing work finished ahead of us being able to reopen. By the time the first lockdown ended, we had, by some miracle, managed to do over 20% of our usual business. Combined with various government reliefs, this meant that when we reopened on the 15th of June, our financial position was approximately the same as the day that we'd closed the doors. So, in common with most retailers, we used the time during lockdown to equip the shop ready for opening. We'd purchased new hardcore equipment, including, as it happens, a light box from Parify. We'd fitted the showroom out with hand sanitizers throughout, and we fitted perspex screens over all the counters. We'd also converted some office space to a customer area to aid distancing if we got busy, and that was fingers crossed on the if. Throughout all of this, we made sure that we consulted with all of the employees, and as much as possible, we tried to address any concerns that they had about returning to work. A priority was to make sure that they felt comfortable and safe in coming back. And so we based our company policy around this, and in most cases went beyond the COVID secure guidelines. I'm just going to break for a glass of water. So
I've got a couple of questions for you on that. Just touching on the staff and the well-being of the staff.
Yeah.
Was there any common themed questions which were relayed to yourself, or any general concerns which kept coming at you? Or
it was, once we went through all the ideas that we'd had as directors of things that we could do on how we were going to allow social distancing to happen in the showroom, things like zoning out the showroom and giving customers individual areas. Most of it was settled, but there were individual things. For example, the goldsmiths were more nervous than the sales staff, whether it's because they're less used to being around people, being in the workshop, I'm not sure, but the goldsmiths were more nervous. So we came up with a system of, when something's taken to the workshop, everything is pre-sterilized when it goes in there. It's put at a certain point, and then the goldsmiths would take it from that point. And it allowed the couple of more nervous people to essentially isolate themselves whilst at work. So, we just worked around everybody. And I think that's also taking that same message from viewing the 15 members of staff and their different levels of nervousness allowed us to also apply that to the differing levels of nervousness of customers. So I think it worked out quite well.
And then you touched on the when you got to sort of week 2 of the initial lockdown, and then the anxiety, and then you get that with fellow JBM members. Again, was there a common anxiety which was across the board from your perspective?
One thing is nobody really knew if what their plan was the right thing to do, and everybody had doubts about themselves, about the decisions that they'd made. And I think looking at it, when the realization was that nobody was really having some bright idea that allowed them to do business as normal. Some people had websites that were already trading at a higher level than others, and obviously that helped them out. But there certainly wasn't a magic formula, and sort of having those conversations that seemed that we're all in the same boat actually helped out massively, and psychologically it kind of took a little bit of the pressure off.
Good. I'll stop interrupting you and let you get back.
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
You're doing a fantastic job.
So, so post first lockdown, when we first returned to work, it was on a shortened week and with a reduced workforce. This was both to save money and to allow for social distancing. But the biggest change when we returned was the introduction of appointments. I know a lot of retailers tried this with variable success. For us, it worked really well and customers adapted to it. In fact, a lot of customers have said that they actually preferred it. Undoubtedly, our odd setup with an out-of-down position helped. We don't have passing trade, so as a destination business, most customers thought to check how we were opening prior to visiting. From June until the end of October, 80 to 90% of the appointments that we had available were taken. And we also managed to accommodate a few other customers that hadn't made appointments each day. Thankfully, I don't think we had to turn anybody away. A definite upside of the appointments is that it spread customers throughout the day rather than everyone arriving at the same time. And this allowed us to continue throughout the period that we were open with a smaller sales team. But the downside of that is it didn't give us any quiet times to complete the other jobs that we usually do between customers. Our out-of-town position and quite strict COVID precautions definitely brought us new business. We typically rely quite heavily on repeat custom, but we saw a lot of new faces appearing. During conversations with these new customers, a lot of them cited the fact that they came to us because they could visit without going into town or to the local shopping centre, Meadow Hall, which is pretty hellish at the best of times. Others had read about our COVID precautions and said that they felt safer coming to us than they would have done going elsewhere. We focused our advertising on safety and service rather than directly selling. The number of inquiries about melting and remaking gold and remodeling jewellery went through the roof, presumably after people had had time to root out their old jewellery. This meant that the workshop was really busy and they were working at the usual December capacity for the majority of July through to October. It wasn't just simple jobs either, and we saw a lot of complex and really quite costly remodels. And thanks to this and a number of people who just wanted to treat themselves to something nice, 3 out of 5 of the months that we were open set new sales records despite a slightly lower than usual number of transactions. And another impacting factor there was that we saw very few wedding rings, which are usually a really big part of the business over that period. So we've hit lockdown 2. The November lockdown was really different to the first. In common with most retailers, a lot of our Christmas business is lined up in November. So not being able to start inquiries at that point wasn't an option for us. Also, during the business of the previous months, our online offering had been somewhat neglected and other bits of paperwork hadn't been done. So we really needed to spend some time doing that, photographing and listing stock on our website, plus a couple of other sales avenues. Anticipating a late rush in December, we also wanted to get the decks cleared in the workshop to allow us to react quickly to any special orders. A big concern over this period was that the virus would come into the building, meaning that we'd have to close while everybody self-isolated. And to avoid doing that, we split into 2 teams working alternate 3-day shifts. It meant we couldn't get through quite as much work as we would have otherwise liked to, but at least we would have had the option to operate on a skeleton staff had someone fallen ill. Fortunately, this didn't happen, and we were able to reopen again at the beginning of December on full strength. So if you have any questions at this point, it seems like a good break.
Definitely. With splitting the staff, Ian, is that something that when we get back to normal and whatever that looks like, do you think that there's going to be a big change from your side as to how the business runs from a staffing level? Would you continue to have sort of split staff, or would you look to go back to the ways which it was previously?
Yeah, it's not quite split staff, but I have worked out a system where we have 1 person furloughed and 2 people using up the holiday time for certainly the next 3 months once we are able to reopen. That way, by having 3 people out of the building at any point, an absolute worst case scenario, if COVID came into the building and we had to close, we'd have a skeleton staff that could at least keep a limited level operational. So I do have a backup plan, but from the level of business that we saw doing before, only having half of the staff in at any point while we're open really isn't practical. It didn't work out for us.
And then I just wanted to, it's not really a question, but just a point where you touched on the consumer confidence from you putting in all the safeguarding procedures, etc. As an NAJ member, through the resources area of a website, you can find a lot of white labeled information which will do the bones of that work for you. So there's certificates in there which you can complete, and risk assessments which you can make for yourselves just by adding in your company name, etc. We've done a lot of that work for you. So for anyone out there that wants to have a look at that, David, if you could just pop the link into the resources area, you will need to make sure you're logged in. It's not it's post login that you can see that. So there we go. And I hadn't even planned that with David. That's how on the ball he is.
Well, we actually did use those resources as well as part of our planning process. So they did come in really useful for us previously and while we were formulating all the plans.
Brilliant. And if there's anything on there, guys, not meaning it's cutting you short, but if there's anything on there which isn't on there, please let us know, because I imagine by sharing, there's lots of other people out there which would really benefit from that information. So Ian, back over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. So now we're into December. Despite worrying that the virus could come into the company and close us down, we really had to throw everything that we had at December. So we opened 7 days instead of 5. We opened late nights during the week, and all the staff were working a lot of overtime. With higher staffing levels and extended hours, we could accommodate up to 72 appointments plus a few walk-ins on the longest days. And though we never quite got to being fully booked, we did see a lot of extra customers. At this point, the extra space it would create had finally got pressed into action. We were fortunate to remain in Tier 3, meaning we could trade right up to Christmas Eve, and also during what was a surprisingly and unusually busy post-Christmas period. And the result was, fortunately, an excellent December. Had we suffered the same pre-Christmas shutdown that a lot of retailers across the country did, then I'm sure it would have been a very different story. So now I've come to the current lockdown and where we are at the moment. So this has felt very different again. In some ways, I'm starting to feel like we're a little bit of an old hand at this, because we've been through it before. And there certainly wasn't the same panic that we felt in March. As we haven't got the same push towards an important period that we had in November, we decided to return to using the furlough as much as possible. But we are also offering click and collect this time. So what that means is that we're visiting the showroom at the moment with 3 members of sales staff and a goldsmith twice a week. But that can be more or less depending on the demand. The workshop have just about finished the backlog of work that they have. So as of next week, we're probably not going to have a goldsmith in at this point. One thing that has been noticeable through each of the lockdowns and has really sort of shown itself is that it takes so much longer to do things remotely than selling things face to face. Photos, emails, and Zoom chats, they've all brought business to us, but they take up so much time. A really important constant for me through the last year has been being a member of the JBN. Though we haven't been able to have the usual face-to-face meetings, the regular Zoom meetings have really helped to keep me sane. Sharing tips, airing problems, and generally just supporting each other has been a really big part of my life over the last year. And I actually really miss the first lockdowns, boozy bingo and quiz nights. And I hope that we reinstate those very soon. I'm really lucky to have supportive colleagues and co-directors, and some of you who are essentially standalone principals in the company don't have that. But sometimes just being able to kick an idea around with somebody outside of the company is important too. And a big part of that is how it allows you to see the bigger picture. Going forward, the big thing that I really want to continue from this year with the business is making appointments. I don't think it's realistic to expect every customer to make an appointment, but for example, with engagement rings and wedding rings, using appointments will allow us to better prepare and offer customers a more enjoyable experience. Further developing the office space to become a proper consultation suite will mean that the customers will feel a little bit more pampered. And it will also take some of the longer inquiries out of the showroom, making it feel less crowded and more comfortable for the other customers that haven't made the appointments. In the past, I've kicked around some ideas about creating a separate web-only, price-orientated diamond website to compete with people like Blue Nile. Having seen firsthand the time that you need to put into completing those remote transactions, I've decided for now to keep the focus on what we know instead. Because actually it's not as easy as it sounds on paper. As well as continuing with what we usually do with remodeling and things, I expect wedding rings to be in demand again once we reopen, and I hope that we will be. We're currently fielding daily questions about wedding rings by email and telephone calls when we're in. The combination of deferred 2020 weddings plus those that were going to happen in 21 anyway should make it a popular year. And if not, then we can really look forward to a bumper 2022. On a personal level, because of a need to work differently, I've spent a lot more time with customers this year than I have probably for the last 10 years. And I'm going to try and continue that. I've really been enjoying getting back to that sort of interaction with customers. And I'd sort of forgotten what a big part of what I love about being a retail jeweler that was. So back to questions, if you have any more.
You summed that up really, really well there, Ian, from that personal thing, because that was actually going to be my, not final, but main question to you. What are the, sort of putting work aside then, what's been your takeaways from this period that we've all been through? What have you learned, and what are you going to maybe change moving forward? You
know, personally, if it wasn't for the horror of the whole situation and the stress of the whole situation, I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and there is no way on earth that whilst working I would ever have been able to spend the time with her that I have for the last year. And actually I've really cherished having that time. So that's been an amazing thing for me personally.
It's brilliant. That's exactly the same with me with a 5-year-old and also now a 3-day-old. But just touching on children, another, and shameless plug again for the resources area, but there is actually some online jewellery colouring books which parents can download for their children if they wish. We've got that all up on the website. My lad's done it. I'll be honest, he did it for 4 minutes and then was bored and then wanted chocolate, but it still was 4 minutes that passed the day. Ian, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions for Ian, if you could pop them in there now, or are you able to join us for the bubble?
Absolutely, I will do. Yeah.
So Ian will be joining us for the bubble as well. It's great to get a real life retailer's perspective on that. So we've also popped Ian's email address into the chat. So Ian, we will see you in a moment in the bubble, but thank you for your time. Absolutely fantastic.
All right, thank you for having me. Anybody that knows me knows that I like to talk, although not usually quite this publicly. So it gave me a good opportunity that I've been missing for a little while. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
So we are almost coming to the end. So David, if you there we go. Apologies about that. So every NAJ Live, we draw out a winner and send them a bottle of bubbles in the post. So today, actually, sorry, my manager may shout at me for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Leah, I'm going to get a special little guest to draw the winner for this. So if you just give me 2 seconds. So this is my little daughter Lola. So the winner of today's bubbles are Jenna from Leonard's Jews. So Jenna, if you could, we will get in touch with you and get your address, and we will get a bottle of bubbles on the way to you. Let me close this door. There we go. So I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. I think it's been really informative and very, very good. She's distracting me slightly. So the bubble chat link will appear in the chat message. If you would like to join us, then please feel free to do so. You can come and ask any questions to Michael, Scott, Mark, Ian. You can ask her some questions, but I doubt she'll answer. Anyway, thank you so much, and we will see you hopefully in a couple of minutes. Thank you, guys.